Telegram has been all over the news lately with the arrest of their founder, Pavel Durov, but the honest truth is that I really never cared for them, and they're not as private or as secure as people claim. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but first we'll talk about privacy with Proton, the company that believes that privacy should not only be the default setting, but an inherent right to everyone. They have an encrypted at rest email, drive storage, calendar, and many more features like a VPN, a password manager, and more. Check them out with the links below. Let me start off by saying that I do not really agree with Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, being held personally liable and accountable for what is going on at Telegram. Telegram does have a lot of issues. They do have a moderation issue. Yes, we will get into, yes, they have a moderation issue. And I do not think it is the free speech issue many are claiming it to be. Hold up, before you start angrily typing in the comments, hear me out. You have to understand that I do not agree with him being held liable for the behavior of users on the messaging platform. But Telegram is not an encrypted chat app. It is a private chat app with encryption features that you optionally can enable. In the same way that Facebook Messenger is a private chat app with encryption features you can optionally enable. Yes, they have an encrypted option on there on Facebook if you didn't know that. In the same way that also Matrix, my favorite way to chat with people, which is a decentralized chat protocol and, service, you can run your own server and everything we'll touch on that in a little bit, is a private chat that I optionally have to enable direct messaging to be encrypted or an encrypted channel to chat in. And then you have to exchange ways to verify and prove each other and all that stuff. I love Matrix. Really great platform. We'll get more into that a little bit later when we talk about the Fediverse and everything. But when you understand that, it opens up a lot of understanding for what's going on with Telegram. Because a lot of people, when they DM each other on Telegram, it's not encrypted. It may be private, but it's not really that encrypted. And when you get into the group chats, that's where the problems really start growing. These groups can be as large as 200,000 from what I was researching. The channels to distribute information can be in the millions. And I don't agree with, Pavel Durov being held personally liable and accountable for the frauds, the scams, the CSAM, the drugs trafficking, the arms trafficking that they're all accusing him of. But Telegram definitely needs to be held accountable for the ability to allow a lot of those things to happen in what are not really encrypted chat rooms and all that. And I would say that if they were encrypted, there would be more to the argument here of we can't really control a lot of that unless you infiltrate the groups because we don't know what's going on there. Signal and WhatsApp in comparison, they are encrypted chat apps. Encryption is the default setting. That's how it works. And, Signal, Signal, just like Proton, do comply with law enforcement. Now, hold up. Let me explain how they do that. They have encrypted messaging, and Proton has encrypted email, drive storage, and all that. Signal and Proton both do not have the ability to access your content. They can access your recovery information. They can maybe give you a little bit of metadata at most, of this is going on and that, this message was sent at that time, but we can't tell you what's in it. That may be at most they can give you. And with the case of Proton, when people are like, well, Proton's not protecting people and all that, they comply with Swiss law. And it happened to be people were setting up the recovery information to say have a Gmail account or such that then revealed social media accounts they were tied to or other services they were tied to that then de-anonymized them. That's how it works. That's how, and that is, they complied with law enforcement to the best of their ability. And that is the one argument that they seem to be having with French authorities against Telegram. And let me read it here. Telegram has played a role in multiple criminal cases in France tied to CSAM, drug trafficking, and online hate crimes, but has shown a, quote, near total absence, end quote, of response to requests for cooperation from law enforcement, Miss Bacassa, that's the French prosecutor. Prosecutors around France, as well as legal authorities in Belgium and other European countries, quote, have shared the same observation, end quote, she said, leading organized crime prosecutors to open an investigation in February on the, quote, potential criminal liability of executives at this messaging platform, end quote. That, I think, is one of the big problems that they're actually having, and Telegram may have played themselves because I was also reading an article from Ars Technica that I saw come up on Mastodon. Yes, Ars Technica does have a Mastodon account. And it was talking about EU investigating if Telegram played down user numbers to avoid regulation. So, basically, Brussels is investigating whether Telegram breached EU digital rules by failing to provide accurate user numbers as officials push to bring the controversial messaging app under stricter supervision. EU legal and data experts suspect that the app has understated its presence in the EU to stay under a 45 million user threshold, above which large online platforms are subject to a swath of Brussels regulations designed to check their influence. That, I think, is going to be very important as well, because, let me read, where was it a little bit down here? Telegram said in February it had 41 million users in the EU. Under the EU's Digital Services Act, DSA, Telegram was supposed to provide an updated number this month, but did not, only declaring it had, quote, significantly fewer than 45 million average monthly active recipients in the EU, end quote. And if you scroll down a little bit further in this article, and by the way, I'm going to link all the articles down below for you to read yourself so you can take what you want out of it. The DSA rules for very large platforms came into operation a year ago, forcing the world's biggest online players, including Instagram, Google, and TikTok, to hire thousands of people to work on compliance with the rules. I'll get to that in a second. The rules, which include banning the targeting of ads to users based on religion, gender, or sexual preferences, mechanisms to force platforms to disclose what steps they are taking to tackle misinformation or propaganda, and new protections for minors have prompted legal challenges from some platforms due to the onerous requirements. So, one of the arguments that I've heard from a lot of people saying, well, Telegram only has a little bit more than 100 people in this operation, so it's very hard for them to moderate. Yeah, no, duh. They'd have to hire a lot of people to handle this. I think people were telling me they had about 900 million users on there. And while you may not necessarily agree with the DSA in Europe, they are doing business in Europe, which means if you are a business in Europe, you have to comply with the laws in Europe. If you don't like it, you can always just shut down and not do business there. Or if you want to do business there, you got to accept it and hire a bunch of people to follow the protections and everything like that. And I think with the allegations of CSAM, as well as misinformation and propaganda, that is a big problem for Telegram, because it looks like Telegram is a big place for a lot of misinformation and propaganda. And if Telegram would have to combat that, they may lose a lot of their users. And I still don't think it's the free speech issue that a lot of people claim, because here's the thing. Protecting children, that shouldn't be a free speech issue. You know, misinformation and propaganda could be an argument of, you know, the same thing as you don't yell fire in a crowded theater, because a lot of misinformation and propaganda can be very harmful to people. And at a certain point, people do have a responsibility to stop that and actually, you know, get the truth out there. Now, be that as it may, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, there's been issues with a lot of platforms pushing certain agendas. Not disagreeing with you. But this goes back to where we can talk about decentralized social media and where I think that's actually the future. I don't think centralized social media is as sustainable as people really think it is. Here's the problem. A lot of centralized social media, pretty much all of it, is privately owned, which means that you have to have investors. Investors want to get a return on their investment, which means that they need to see line go up, which means that as private as you want to make a lot of these things, they're going to sell your data. And not only that, infinite growth is unsustainable. It really is. I don't care how capitalist you are. It is. The whole thing about when I was studying economics and everything is a lot of it is predicated on scarcity of certain resources. You can't have infinite of everything. So with that being said, we have to understand that we may have a full circle moment of the internet started out with decentralized services to begin with, where we first started out with IRC and email being actually hosted by individuals and stuff like that. And then we started to see more people use them. And we didn't have the infrastructure that we do today, where a lot of people are even talking about they have 1 gigabit per second synchronous fiber in their home as a basic connection. When I grew up, we had dial-up. You maybe had 14 kilobits a second. And some of you are going to say, I had less than that. We get it, Grandpa. You had 8,000 bauds or whatever. Got it. But with that being said, we now can actually host a lot of our own infrastructure. You're actually seeing, Mastodon, PixelFed, Matrix, and a lot of these other services start to really show that possibility for things. Because social media is not really a profitable endeavor as much as people think. I mean, if Twitter's losing money, I think Facebook has been losing money for quite a while. And Facebook makes their money off of selling your data. Because the honest truth is, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So, I really see that decentralized social media is going to be the way of the future, because it's also very expensive for centralized organizations to have this patchwork of legal frameworks they have to deal with in every single country, with teams that, understand the laws and regulations in every single country and comply with all these laws. I mean, the Digital Services Act, yes, it's a pain in the butt, but it only applies if your social media network has 45 million or more users, which means if you have a decentralized server that happens to be smaller, you have a lot less regulations to fall under. You still got to deal with CSAM and, drug trafficking and arms trafficking laws that, your country, state, whatever, has to have you held liable for. Because Section 230 in the United States will only protect you from so much as well, but it's a lot less overhead. And then you only have to worry about these small servers having things. And then you don't like how one server is moderated and administrated, you can go up to another server. But I think that's another discussion we'll have in a whole other video about the Fediverse and federated social media, because I think it's a fascinating topic in and of itself, especially for someone who is a, IT and cybersecurity loving person that loves how networks and, federations and all of this can play into each other. But I don't think Telegram really is as innocent as a lot of people claim. If these, chat rooms and all that weren't as encrypted, if they weren't working with law enforcement as well as they should have all this time, that in and of itself is going to be a problem. They were not as forward-thinking as they really should have been, and they did not consider the consequences of their actions. Again, I don't think Pavel Durov should be held personally accountable and liable for the issues of his company, unless the European Union and, specifically France and all that, have a lot more information than we are privy to, that maybe he did personally believe this and, wanted to execute this to skirt the law. But that's a whole other, discussion, and that hasn't been proven, and we have to believe an innocent until proven guilty. I do think Telegram has to seriously change their tune and approach to different things and accept you can't be a free speech absolutist, because there are things that at a certain point everyone will not be okay with. And if you disagree with me on this, think about it this way. Imagine you have people in your house, and imagine you allow those people to say and do whatever they want. You're going to tell me that if they say or do certain things, you're just going to let them do that in your house and you're not going to kick them out? I mean, you can let your imagination go to whatever extreme you think, but at a certain point, you're going to have a threshold where you're going to say, that's not okay to do in my house. That's the reality with things. Free speech means that you are free to say whatever you want. But I am also free to not associate with you, and you are also not free from the consequences of said free speech. And that is, I think, the thing that a lot of people absolutely forget. And these have been my opinions. This is my perspective on the whole issue. Feel free to let me know what you think down below in the comments. If you like this content as well as you want to see any more, please like and subscribe, as well as check out all the other social media that I have down below in the description. So, thank you all. I'll see you around.